My name is Eleanor Bennett, and what I'm about to tell you changed everything. For 43 years, I was just the cleaning lady, invisible, disposable, a convenience. But that night, as they handed me a plastic container of cold leftovers from their anniversary celebration, they had no idea who I really was or what I was about to do. If you've ever been made to feel invisible or unworthy by your own family, this story might just give you the courage to stand up and reclaim what's rightfully yours. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Here, Eleanor, take this home. It's from our special dinner. My daughter-in-law, Caroline said with that condescending smile I'd grown to detest. She didn't even look me in the eyes as she passed me the container of half-eaten salmon and wilted salad. My son Thomas stood beside her, fidgeting with his expensive watch, the one I later discovered was bought with money that should have been mine. "Thank you," I said quietly, my 72-year-old hands trembling slightly as I accepted their pity offering. They had hosted a lavish 30th wedding anniversary celebration at their beachfront home, a home purchased with the inheritance they had manipulated my late husband into leaving them instead of me. 50 guests dining on gourmet food, drinking champagne that cost more than my monthly rent, and not one invitation for Mother. Just the leftovers. Always the leftovers. They had no idea that earlier that day, I had received a letter that would change everything. A letter that proved what I had suspected for years, that my husband William's will had been altered while he was heavily medicated during his final days. A letter that contained evidence of my son's betrayal, his forgery, his theft of what was rightfully mine. They had no idea that I wasn't just the silent, compliant mother and grandmother they had taken for granted all these years. They had no idea that beneath my weathered exterior beat the heart of a woman who had once been the youngest female accountant at Morgan Financial in 1972, who had graduated with honors before giving it all up to raise my family. They had no idea that the frail old cleaning lady they dismissed so easily had finally found her voice and was about to use it. As I walked out of their extravagant beachfront home that evening, plastic container in hand, I made a decision. I would reclaim what was mine, my dignity, my financial security, and the truth about my husband's will, and in doing so, I would teach my son and his wife the cost of treating people as invisible. I threw the container of leftovers in the first trash can I passed. I wouldn't be taking their scraps anymore, not from my dinner plate, and not from my life. My story begins 45 years ago, when I met William Bennett at the university library. I was 27, working on my master's degree in financial accounting. William was 34, handsome in his professor's tweed jacket, with intelligent eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He was everything I dreamed of: educated, kind, ambitious. We married within 6 months. Our early years were beautiful. We bought a modest house in the suburbs, and I put my career on hold when Thomas was born. William continued teaching at the university, but he had entrepreneurial dreams. When Thomas was 7, William took a risk and founded his own investment consulting firm. Those early years of the business were lean, and I kept our family afloat by doing accounting work from home for small local businesses. By the time Thomas was in high school, William's firm had found its footing. Over the next 20 years, it grew into a respected regional investment company with 30 employees and a substantial portfolio of assets. I had stopped working outside our home long ago to focus on our family, occasionally helping William with the books during the company's early days. Thomas was our only child, the center of our world. I poured everything into raising him: my time, my education, my dreams. William worked long hours building his business, always promising that everything he did was for our son's future. We both wanted Thomas to have opportunities we never had. When Thomas brought Caroline home during his final year of university, I had reservations I couldn't quite name. She was beautiful, well-spoken, from a good family, as people used to say. But there was something calculating in her eyes when she looked around our modest home, something cold in her smile when she examined the simple gold band on my finger. "She's ambitious," William said approvingly after they left. "She'll be good for Thomas." "Perhaps too ambitious," I replied, but William just laughed and kissed my forehead. He always thought I worried too much. After their wedding, things changed. Thomas and Caroline visited less frequently. When they did, Caroline would subtly criticize our home, our clothes, our lifestyle. "You really should update this living room, Eleanor. These curtains must be from the 70s. Or, "Thomas said you used to be an accountant? How quaint." I could never give up my career for anything. William's business continued to grow, and by the time he was 68, he had built a substantial portfolio of investments and properties worth nearly $8 million. "We'll be comfortable in our old age," he promised, "and there will be plenty for Thomas and the grandchildren." The grandchildren, Emily and James, my beautiful grandchildren, whom I rarely saw, except when Caroline needed free childcare. I loved those days, reading to them, baking cookies, telling them stories about their grandfather's childhood. They were the lights of my life, the reason I tolerated Caroline's condescension. When William was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 70, everything collapsed. 8 months of hospitals, of pain, of watching my vibrant husband fade away. Thomas and Caroline were too busy for regular visits. "The children have activities," Caroline would explain. "Thomas is up for partner at the firm." In William's final weeks, they suddenly became more attentive. I was too exhausted, too grief-stricken to question their renewed interest. Caroline insisted on helping with the paperwork, with the medical decisions. Thomas spent hours with his father behind closed doors. I was often sent home to rest or to take a shower. After William died, I discovered that somehow the will had changed. The house, the investment portfolio, the savings, everything except for a small monthly stipend of $2,000 went to Thomas. To ensure proper management, the will stated in language that never sounded like my husband. "Dad was worried about your ability to handle the finances at your age," Thomas explained gently. "He wanted me to take care of everything for you." I knew William would never doubt my financial acumen. I had managed our household budget for 40 years. I had helped him set up his business accounting systems, but I was too broken by grief to fight. Within 6 months, they sold our house, my home of 39 years. "It's too big for you alone, Mom," Thomas insisted. "The stairs are dangerous at your age." I was helped into a small one-bedroom apartment in a building for seniors. My beautiful antique furniture wouldn't fit, so it was sold. My books, my china, my memories all dispersed or stored in their attic for safekeeping. "You'll be more comfortable here," Caroline said, standing in my new apartment with its beige walls and institutional carpeting. "We've arranged for meals to be delivered twice a week, and there's a nice social program for people your age." I had gone from being a homeowner, a mother, a wife, to being an old woman in a box, an obligation to be managed. When my savings dwindled faster than expected due to medical costs not covered by insurance, I needed to find work. At 70, with professional skills decades out of date, my options were limited. Thomas reluctantly arranged for me to work as a housekeeper for some of their wealthy friends. "Just until we sort out your finances, Mom," he promised. For 2 years, I cleaned homes, including theirs. I dusted the antique end tables that had once stood in my living room. I polished the silver candlesticks William had given me on our 25th anniversary. I washed the sheets in the guest bedroom where my grandmother's quilt now lay. Caroline would leave notes about spots I'd missed. Thomas would apologetically ask me to work extra hours when they hosted parties. Neither ever seemed to notice the humiliation in my eyes, the tremor in my hands, the silent rage that built with every passing day. During that second year of cleaning houses, I found something tucked away in a box of old photos Thomas had carelessly stored in their basement. It was a draft of William's original will, the one I remembered discussing with him before his illness. In it, the distribution was fair, half the estate to me, half to Thomas, with me retaining our home and a board position in the company. I tucked that draft away, knowing it wasn't legally binding but suspecting it might be important someday. Then came their 30th anniversary party. I wasn't invited as a guest, of course. I was there to help the catering staff clean up. I moved silently among the guests, many of whom had been my friends before William died. Some avoided my eyes, embarrassed by my new station. Others didn't recognize me at all, this stooped woman in the gray uniform. I overheard Caroline talking to her friend Judith by the bar. "Eleanor? Oh, she's fine. The cleaning gives her purpose, you know." Otherwise, she'd just sit alone in that apartment all day. But wasn't William's firm quite successful? Judith asked. I thought there would have been a substantial estate. Caroline lowered her voice, but not enough. William left everything to Thomas. He knew Eleanor couldn't manage on her own. Between us, William was concerned about early dementia. Such a shame. My hands tightened around the tray I was carrying. William had never once suggested I was showing signs of cognitive decline. Not once. As I was leaving that night, carrying those insulting leftovers, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Martin Schaefer, William's old business partner who had retired 5 years before William's death. We had lost touch after William died, or rather, Thomas had made sure we lost touch. The email was brief. Eleanor, I've discovered something disturbing about William's will. We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow? The next morning, I met Martin at a small cafe far from Thomas and Caroline's neighborhood. He looked older, his once black hair now white, but his eyes were sharp as ever. I've been trying to reach you for months, he said, clasping my hands in his. Thomas told me you wanted no contact with William's old business associates, that it was too painful for you. Another lie. I had asked repeatedly for Martin's contact information, but Thomas always had an excuse. Eleanor, I never believed William would leave you so vulnerable, Martin continued. He talked constantly about providing for you, about ensuring you would never have to worry. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Last month, when I was cleaning out some old files, I found a copy of William's final, official will, drawn up 6 months before he died, when he was still lucid. He gave it to me for safekeeping, concerned about some strange questions Thomas had been asking about the estate. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. There it was, in black and white. The house, half the business shares, the investment portfolio all left to me. Thomas received the remaining business shares and one of the smaller properties, a fair division that would have allowed us both security. This will names me as executor, Martin said grimly. I was never contacted after William's death. The will that was probated must have been a forgery. I actually found a draft of something similar, I admitted, telling him about the document I'd discovered in Thomas's basement. How can we prove that the probated will is fake? I asked, hope flaring for the first time in years. William's lawyer, Gregory Phillips, died shortly after William. Convenient, isn't it? But I've been doing some digging. The witnesses to the probated will were Caroline's cousin and a nurse who worked on William's floor. The nurse has since admitted to me that she never saw William sign anything. She signed a blank form at Caroline's request. I felt dizzy with the implications. They stole everything. Not just from you, Eleanor. The business has been systematically stripped of assets over the past 3 years. Projects William was passionate about have been abandoned. Staff who were loyal to him have been fired. Thomas and Caroline have been extracting as much cash as possible. What can we do? I've been gathering evidence, Martin said. Bank transfers, property sales, suspicious timing. With this original will and the nurse's testimony, we have enough to challenge the probated will on grounds of fraud. I sat back, mind racing. They think I'm a senile old woman who doesn't understand finances. They have no idea I managed William's books for years before he could afford a professional accountant. Martin smiled a wolfish grin I remembered from business dinners decades ago. They have no idea who they're dealing with, do they? That afternoon, instead of going to clean Thomas and Caroline's house as scheduled, I went to see Patricia Winters, a lawyer Martin recommended who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. Unfortunately, Mrs. Bennett, cases like yours are all too common, Patricia said after hearing my story. Children taking advantage of elderly parents, manipulating them during times of illness or grief. But most victims never fight back, either out of shame or because they don't want to damage family relationships. My family relationship is already damaged beyond repair, I said firmly. They've taken everything from me, my home, my security, my dignity. I want it back. Patricia's eyes gleamed with approval. Then let's get to work. Over the next weeks, I lived a double life. On the surface, I remained the compliant mother and grandmother, cleaning houses and accepting scraps from my son's table. But secretly, I worked with Martin and Patricia, gathering evidence, building our case. I used my cleaning job at Thomas and Caroline's house to photograph documents I found in Thomas's home office, bank statements showing massive withdrawals from the business accounts. Property deeds for vacation homes I'd never heard of, purchased after William's death. Offshore account numbers hastily scribbled on notepads. Martin introduced me to former employees of William's firm who had been abruptly terminated after Thomas took control. They provided testimony about irregular financial practices, about Thomas's reckless decisions, about Caroline's extravagant spending of company funds. My grandson James, now 12, unwittingly helped when he proudly showed me his new computer skills. "Look, Grandma, I can recover deleted files." In his innocent enthusiasm, he recovered emails from Caroline's laptop while I was helping him with homework at their house. Emails that discussed getting rid of the old bat and making sure she never sees those original documents. Patricia helped me access medical records proving William had been heavily medicated during the time the fraudulent will was supposedly signed. The handwriting expert she hired confirmed what I already knew: the signature on the probated will was not my husband's. 3 months after receiving Martin's email, we were ready. Patricia filed a lawsuit challenging the probated will and alleging elder financial abuse, fraud, and undue influence. The morning Thomas was served with the lawsuit papers, he called me in a rage. "What the hell is this, Mom? Are you out of your mind?" "No, Thomas," I replied calmly. "For the first time in years, my mind is perfectly clear." "You'll lose," he hissed. "You have no idea what you're doing. You're just a confused old woman." "Am I? Then how did I manage to gather evidence of all your offshore accounts? How did I get copies of emails between you and Caroline discussing how to keep me from discovering William's true will? How did I find the nurse who admitted she never saw your father sign anything?" Silence on the other end. "I may be old, Thomas, but I am neither stupid nor helpless. Your father knew that, even if you've forgotten it." "Mom," his voice changed, became wheedling. "We can work this out as a family. There's no need for lawyers." "We stopped being a family the moment you decided your mother was disposable," I said. "I'll see you in court." I hung up, hands shaking but heart steady. That evening, Caroline appeared at my apartment door, her perfect makeup unable to hide her panic. "Eleanor, this is ridiculous," she said, pushing past me into the small living room. "Why are you doing this to us? After all we've done for you?" I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt foreign after so many years of holding myself in. "What exactly have you done for me, Caroline? Taken my home? Made me clean houses at 72? Given me leftovers from parties I should have been invited to? We gave you a place to live. We found you work when you needed it. You stole what was rightfully mine and then made me grateful for the crumbs you deigned to toss my way." She changed tactics, her voice softening. "Think about Emily and James. Do you want them to see their family torn apart by lawsuits? To see their grandmother trying to take their security away?" I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. "Do you think I would ever harm my grandchildren? Unlike you, I understand what family truly means. The trust fund William established for their education remains untouched. I've made sure of that in our legal filings. This is between us adults." She paled. "You've been planning this for a while." "Longer than you think," I replied. "Ever since I found that draft of William's real will in your basement last year, I just needed proof, and now I have it." "Thomas will fight you with everything he has," she warned, heading for the door. "I'm counting on it," I replied. "I look forward to seeing how your social circle reacts when they discover what you've done. How proud will your country club friends be when they learn you forced your husband's elderly mother to clean their toilets while you spent her inheritance?" The court case became the talk of the town. Former friends called to express shock and support. William's old business associates came forward with stories of Thomas's mismanagement. Even Caroline's parents contacted my lawyer, disturbed by the evidence presented. Thomas and Caroline fought viciously. They claimed I was mentally unstable, that I had always been jealous of their success, that William had verbally expressed different wishes than those in his original will. They brought in expensive lawyers and paid for expert witnesses. But they couldn't fight the evidence. Bank records don't lie. Email timestamps don't lie. And most damning of all, The nurse who had falsely witnessed the fraudulent will broke down on the stand, admitting that Caroline had paid her $5,000 to sign the document without William ever being present. 9 months after receiving that container of leftovers, I sat in the courtroom as the judge delivered his verdict. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of fraud, undue influence, and elder financial abuse, he stated, glaring at Thomas and Caroline. The probated will is hereby invalidated, and the original will, dated April 15, 2017, shall be recognized as the true last testament of William Bennett. I closed my eyes, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. William's true wishes would be honored at last. Furthermore, the judge continued, the defendants Thomas and Caroline Bennett are ordered to provide a full accounting of all assets removed from the estate since William Bennett's death, with interest to be returned to Mrs. Eleanor Bennett within 30 days. Thomas and Caroline sat motionless, faces ashen. The court also awards punitive damages in the amount of $2 million for the deliberate and malicious nature of the financial abuse perpetrated against the plaintiff. This is in addition to the approximately $4 million in assets that rightfully belong to Mrs. Bennett under the valid will. As we left the courtroom, reporters waited outside. Patricia had advised me to prepare a statement, but in that moment, looking at my son's defeated expression, I couldn't summon the triumph I had expected to feel. "Mrs. Bennett, how does it feel to win against your own son?" a young reporter called out. I paused, considering. There are no winners today, only justice for a good man whose final wishes were dishonored. William Bennett built a legacy meant to provide security for his family, all of his family. Today, the court has restored that intention. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed. I moved out of the small apartment into a lovely garden home I purchased near Martin's neighborhood. The business was restructured, with Martin returning as interim CEO until proper management could be established. The offshore accounts were traced and reclaimed. Thomas and Caroline sold their beachfront house to help pay the judgment. Their marriage, already strained by the lawsuit and the public exposure of their actions, began showing visible cracks. At court-mandated meetings to discuss asset transfers, they barely spoke to each other, with Caroline often leaving Thomas to handle the details alone. They eventually moved to another state, taking Emily and James with them. My heart broke for my grandchildren, but I established trust funds for both that neither Thomas nor Caroline could touch. 6 months after the verdict, I received a letter from Thomas, the first communication since the trial. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. What Caroline and I did was unforgivable. Dad would be ashamed of me, and rightly so. I tell myself we started with good intentions, that we really believed we were better equipped to manage the estate, but the truth is we were greedy and arrogant. The money changed us, or perhaps it just revealed who we truly were. Caroline and I are separated. The pressure of the lawsuit and the aftermath exposed problems in our marriage that had been building for years. I'm in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone who could treat his own mother so cruelly. The children ask about you. I've told them the truth, a simplified version appropriate for their ages, but the truth nonetheless. That I stole from you, that I was wrong, and that you were brave enough to stand up for yourself. I don't ask for reconciliation. I just wanted you to know that your actions forced me to face myself, and I'm trying to become someone better." I cried when I read his words, the first tears I had allowed myself since the trial. Not tears of joy or vindication, but of mourning for what might have been, for the family we could have been if greed hadn't poisoned everything. Today, at 73, I live a life I couldn't have imagined a year ago. I volunteer at a financial literacy program for seniors. I've helped establish a legal aid fund for elderly victims of financial abuse. Martin and I have dinner twice a week, enjoying a friendship that has deepened into something that makes my heart feel young again. I still haven't responded to Thomas's letter. Some wounds heal slowly, if at all. But last week, I sent birthday cards to Emily and James with an invitation to visit during their summer break if they wish. Children shouldn't pay for their parents' sins. Sometimes I think about that container of leftovers, such a small thing, yet it represented everything wrong with how they saw me. not as a person of value, but as someone to be appeased with scraps from their table. William would be proud, I think, of how I finally stood up for myself. He always said I was stronger than I knew. What I've learned through all of this is that age doesn't diminish our worth, that silence in the face of injustice only enables further abuse, that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and your voice. They treated me to leftovers at their anniversary party. They had no idea that their condescension would awaken the woman I used to be, the woman I had forgotten I could be again. The woman who would finally say, "Enough." And to every woman listening to my story who has been made to feel invisible, who has accepted scraps when she deserves the whole table, I say this: find your voice, use it. It's never too late to demand what is rightfully yours.